Over the years, Assassin's Creed has had many different things in the franchise. This video is going to be going into what Assassin's Creed has gone through and why it is dying inside. So, Assassin's Creed has been around since 2007, with the first Assassin's Creed being made by Ubisoft after the success of Prince of Persia. They would follow this by 3 other games with Ezio and would connect the story from these games with Assassin's Creed 3 with Connor Kenway. This would be the end of the main modern-day story and would start the Black Flag in Assassin's Creed Rogue. These games are totally different than all the other games, as they were more naval combat oriented and not fighting combat. Yes, there was still that old Assassin's Creed in them, but they were mainly about sailing ships. Then we get to Assassin's Creed Unity, which is released around the same time as Rogue, and this game changed a lot for the studio. When this game released, it was one of the buggiest games in the franchise, and one of the buggiest games of its time. This game released in 2014. Ubisoft would follow this by releasing Assassin's Creed Syndicate a year later. Syndicate would improve on many things, but would ultimately lead to something bigger than itself. Ubisoft would then take 3 years off to make their masterpiece, Assassin's Creed Origins. Assassin's Creed Origins was a new style of Assassin's Creed game, as it was mainly an RPG. The combat was revamped. The game was more oriented towards getting loot and leveling up and making your skills better, like all the other games, but simpler, kind of. This would start the RPG line of all of the Assassin's Creed games. It would start the things of Assassin's Creed Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla. They would return to this by a year later, 2 years later after Valhalla, making Assassin's Creed Mirage, which was said to be a throwback to the original games. It was definitely a throwback, as it was a smaller city and a smaller world than Odyssey, for example, which was humongous. It would do a lot of things well, but also did some things to remind you of the newer Ubisoft. All of this underlies of the dying of Ubisoft. Ubisoft has been on a decline for the past around 3 years. Ubisoft in the past decade has changed their games so much and monetized their games a lot, and by even increasing the things, this would lead to them releasing some mediocre games in the middle. One of these games being Star Wars Outlaws, which released recently. Star Wars Outlaws at launch was a glitchy mess, and people didn't like it. They also had early access that was you had to restart your game because of a bug. And then that leads to Assassin's Creed Shadows, which was supposed to release on November 15th, 2024. After the feedback of Star Wars Outlaws, this game would get pushed back to February 14th, 2025, almost 3 months later. Over that time, the game has looked ginormously better, and looks to be a pretty good game in my opinion now. And this is the last chance for Ubisoft, as they are in talks about selling to people and buyouts, as they just shut down XDefiant. They also have Skull and Bones that is still going, which is not getting that many players as expected, and they're all in a whole decline. Ubisoft needs to go back to their main functions. They need to go back to the smaller maps and good graphics, and they need to go back to the old, simpler thing, not these RPG type games. They just need to go towards these older games where there's a smaller places to visit, but it's still a big map where you can't just you can go everywhere. Odyssey was a really big thing, that is the biggest map in Assassin's Creed history, as it is basically all of like Greece. And these games, and Odyssey was also a Game of the Year nominee in 2018, but the game was good. But as time went on, people have seen that Ubisoft is not exactly what they have seemed to been in the past year or two. They can definitely fix this. They need to go back to their roots. Listen to feedback among people and find their true game. Many of these newer games have kind of been out of the blue, and these games have been going back in the franchise, and in like timeline order, have been going back as like Origins. Origins is the first game in the Assassin's Creed timeline. Odyssey is the second, Valhalla is the third, and then Mirage is the fourth. I think they need to go to more modern day stuff and go back to the well-established Assassin's Creed order, where it is based on more stealth and more political views and an in-depth story. Many of this can easily be fixed, as they really just need to find their true story. They need to get good writers and make a good game that doesn't take them 1 year to make, as many of the games are a year in between. It's going to be very interesting of how the story is in Assassin's Creed Shadows, and I think it'll be good. I think I'm going to play it when it releases. I'll make a video on it and I'll tell you how it is. But this is really the last straw for Ubisoft, and if this game doesn't do well, then it might be the end for Ubisoft. We can see the downfall of one of the most memorable franchises in gaming history.